All right, welcome everybody to Tri-State Triumphs for Thursday, June 11th. We are pleased to be joined by Macomb native and former Western Illinois football player as well, Troy Brown, who is currently now the head of stadium operations for the Cleveland Browns, which is a really unique journey, Troy. Obviously, from your high school and college football experiences to now, kind of how did you find your way in this path to this particular job?
Yeah, so obviously my love of sports is what led me here to begin with. So when I got out of college, I graduated in Western in 1988. I have a law enforcement degree. I come from a law enforcement family, so I was trying to, wait to be hired for a police officer job in, I think it was down in St. Petersburg, Florida. So that process back in the 80s took 3 or 4 months to clear the background test and do all that kind of stuff. So I went down to the local stadium, and I was obviously my love of sports. Went in and ended up getting hired and started kind of as a part-time security person working the loading dock. And then as I kind of just grew and gained experience and I was still waiting for it to be hired by the police department, I kind of rose up and became a supervisor, and then worked my way up to manager, and then realized that I really liked working in the crowd management piece of it, which is security, operations, and event management. And kind of just at that point, went from there, and throughout my career, one of the places I ended up was spring training home of the White Sox in Sarasota, Florida. So I worked there for 3 years. I was there actually when Michael was playing baseball, so it was awesome. And then also Bo Jackson was in camp at the same time. So at that point, I'm working for a security company in Florida. The timing of it was perfect because the owner of the Bulls also owns the White Sox, so I was able to meet all those folks. The Bulls were getting ready to open the United Center, so at that point I was asked if I wanted to come back to Chicago, so being from Illinois, to participate in the opening of the United Center. So I went from the part-time security kind of thing I was doing in Florida to a full-time position back home in Chicago, where I was doing the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and the White Sox. So from there, it was a pretty amazing journey.
I can imagine, Troy, and I got to imagine that maybe you probably watched The Last Dance, and Steve Horrell and I kind of talked a little bit about you when that was going on. Just your reminiscences of being a part of that and kind of seeing it the outside looking in.
Yeah, it was surreal. Watching The Last Dance for me was pretty emotional. A lot of the folks that I saw on during the show were folks that worked with me and for me in Chicago. I formed some great relationships in Chicago. So it's funny. A lot of people ask me, "You're lucky you work in sports," and "Oh my gosh, you work in sports." And my answer is always back, "No, I work in people." So everyone that I encounter are people. I have very little to do what goes on the court or the field, but I have everything to do what goes on in the stands, and that's quite challenging to kind of manage those crowds. So watching The Last Dance for me was a trip down memory lane for sure. And it was just great to kind of relive those times. And thinking back on it, I was very fortunate. I caught the last three-peat of the Bulls repeat, and it was absolutely amazing. The city of Chicago was jumping. The United Center was jumping every single night. And just watching that show really hit home. And it was really nice to see a lot of the people that I used to work with way back, at that time that was going on. So that was very nice. We were on the text the whole time, so everyone was sending me videos of them, and I was sending them videos of me, and it just kind of worked out really kind of nice.
I mentioned to people who aren't huge sports fans that we were doing this with you today. They're all fascinated, even beyond just the construct of you get to be, you have some proximity still to the game at the professional level, but just how daunting your job seems in title and application. What is a typical day like? I mean, and obviously, Troy, I have to imagine game day is insane.
Yeah, so game day is honestly what it's all about for me. It's amazing. So, I'll just kind of speak to my time here in Cleveland. So putting on a football game is quite the production. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that the average fan has no idea. For example, we use over 2,500 day of game staff members to put on a football game. So you have your security staff, ushers, ticket takers, food service, housekeeping, maintenance folks. I mean, it takes a lot. This building is 1.8 million square feet and 68,000 seats, and we pretty much sell out every single game. So to manage that crowd when they're coming in, it's challenging, but I think that's what keeps me in it. And I also think that being, my love of sports was the competitive challenge of always that were presented, it's kind of neat. I kind of feel like I'm still kind of into that, more of a coach type thing, because I have all those folks that work for me, and I've got to get them all on the same plan. So I got to get them prepped, got to make sure they understand what their expectations are. Then I need to make sure they're doing it on a pretty large scale. And it's just one of those things that we never get it perfect. We strive for it. And I think that's the competitive nature of me coming out too, is like, I'm going to get it perfect someday before I end my career. But it's quite fun. It's, between the fan reaction and being responsible for fan safety and security is a huge responsibility, but it's one that I take head on, and I'm passionate about it. And I do think that part of you heard me mention people, and I work in people, not really sports. I think that really drives me, is trying to put that team together to kind of overcome and all the obstacles and the challenges we have, and strive towards that goal of the perfect fan experience, where fans come here, they don't really know what we're doing. They just know that they came, it was fun, they were able to get food, they had a good experience, and then they went home safely.
You talked about liking a challenge. I have to imagine, I'm telling you this like you don't know, a city as passionate about sports as Cleveland has to kind of ratchet that challenge level for you up on a Sunday to Sunday basis very, very highly.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. I look at baseball, hockey, basketball as marathons, and I look at football as a sprint. It's 10 games. Those other games are 40 or 80. It's emotionally, I think the NFL does an amazing job of emotionally tying us to our football teams. Passionate fans here in Cleveland are off the charts. And I loved Chicago. I'm not even comparing the two, but the football world is the fans. It's an all-day event for football fans. So it starts in the morning with tailgating and getting together with friends, doing your tailgating experience, and then coming down to the stadium and then rooting for your favorite team. So Cleveland is unique. I got here at the right time. I got here in 2014, so I timed it for the Indians World Series, the Cavs basketball championship, the RNC, and then this past summer we did the All-Star game. So even my time here in Cleveland has been really exciting, and I've learned a lot about the passion that this city holds for sports. I mean, it's amazing, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
I want to talk to you about some of the important skills that you have and you've amassed over the years that came from football. Team building, obviously, which you kind of reference with the folks that you have to govern to make an event come off on a daily basis, but also problem solving and logistics, which I have to imagine on the fly kind of harks back to what you learned about being adaptable through your football experience. Well, how much does being a player, do you think, back in the day still serve you to this day, Troy, in being able to tackle the day-to-day of your job?
I think it's invaluable. I think it's not much different. I mean, my competitive working in team sports, that's what I do. I kind of run a team. So it's the same thing. We need everyone, and we need everyone to do their part. And so you have to know when to push, and you need to know when to pick somebody up. And I think that's what sports is all about. That's what a coach does. So it's you push the people that need pushed, and you help the folks that need helped. But yeah, overall, it's that camaraderie and that doing something together as a team and accomplishing something together. I mean, this job is way bigger than me. I cannot do it alone. I rely on several key people, and my goal is to make sure those key people have the resources they need to do their jobs right, and to provide them the encouragement when they need encouraged. So I think it parallels greatly. And for me, it was kind of an easy transition. So I'm a people person as it is, and you heard me talk about that. And that's part of what I enjoy, is watching my people, training them and giving them the resources and watching them go out and thrive on their own. So my biggest compliment is when someone who works for me becomes me, moves up, whether it's here or somewhere else. That's the greatest accomplishment I can look at.
I don't say there's a misconception about your job, Troy, because I think people understand how hard it is. But put it into perspective in terms of the greatest challenges on like a day-to-day basis for you, because you're not dealing in small volume. You are dealing at volume of customers at the highest level, and it is to some degree, like everything else in this world, customer service.
Yeah. So people are unpredictable. I think that the biggest challenge that I have and I face is trying to get that many people like-minded towards the same goal. I was being interviewed for my hometown newspaper years ago, and I was asked a question, what do you like the most about your job? And I said, at the time it was 800 people. So getting 2,500 people all thinking alike, all committed and dedicated to the goal to carry out the process. What's the worst thing about your job? Trying to get 2,500 people together dedicated to carry out the process, because it is a huge challenge. And that was kind of what I had said about it's never going to be perfect because we're dealing with imperfect human beings. People have good days, bad days. We rely on part-time staff. We have very few full-time staff to carry this out. My operation staff is a total of 28. Half of those are facility folks who maintain the building. The other half are event operations folks. So we rely heavily on the part-time staff that come in to do their job, and they need a lot of guidance. They need a lot of oversight. So, training, supervision, and leadership are the key 3 traits that we need in order to be successful to get those 2,500 staff members all pushing in the right direction so that we can reach all of our goals.
Troy, one of the biggest reasons we started this program was to show young people that, hey, you don't have to take a linear path. It's not a prescribed job. If you're creative and you're clever and kind of find your interests in this world, there's a job out there that fits you perfectly. If you could give advice either to the younger you or to young people out there who are kind of looking for a calling, what have you kind of learned about finding that, that right job for you in your process?
Absolutely. I have a son who just graduated college, and the advice I gave him is, look, you don't have to you can't be the president tomorrow, and you can't be rich tomorrow. You have to build your foundation. So go ahead, be humble, be willing to do anything and everything. If you remember, I started out as a loading dock security part-time and just kind of worked my way up to supervisor, then manager, and then a director, and now vice president. So it takes patience, but it also takes a willingness to do anything that's asked of you, because what you're doing is you're building that foundation. As I tell my son, you're building that foundation to get you where you want to go years down the road. I never envisioned this. Coming out of college, I was going to be a police officer. I came from a law enforcement family. I still, ironically, oversee police here, so it still parallels. But it's one of those things that you got to find something you're passionate about, and then find ways to challenge yourself in that field. And then just keep working hard and put your head down. I'm still a firm believer, maybe it's my age, hard work pays off. So do anything, be willing to do anything and everything you can to learn as much as you can. And then the second big piece to that is you've got to know how to manage people. We're all different in our own ways. We're all unique in our own ways. So you have to learn how to navigate that people and managing those people, especially as you become a supervisor. I have a lot of young supervisors who I would promote, and the first thing they would do is turn into a dictator. And that's not how it works, right? So you need to learn how to get people to follow you in the right way where they respect you. You can't lead by intimidation. You have to do it by respect. And so, if someone young person is, especially younger, don't worry about the money right now. Worry about what you're doing and the foundation you're building, and if you like what you're doing. And then if you find what you're doing, then you can go out and try to find out what that next level is to take you where you want to go eventually.
Last one for you, Troy, and I think this is a really important question we ask everybody as well, and you've kind of already alluded to it. I come from a law enforcement family, obviously blue-collar football background, and you're kind of a self-made guy in everything that you do. How much of that is Macomb, and how much of being from Macomb shaped you and kind of made you the success you've become today in your current job?
Absolutely. It has everything to do with being from Macomb and coming from that small town. Some of my closest friend in this world still are high school teammates that I had when I played sports with, every single one of them. So luckily with technology at our age, we still get to keep in touch. So we're constantly texting back and forth. We're on a text stream today. There's 5 or 6 of us. I actually ended up buying some property in Macomb for the family that raised me back in the day. And so I built a little cabin on it, and I have 50 acres of hunting ground, and that's what takes me, I call it what balances me. So when I go back there, it's amazing because I see, not only high school teammates and friends that I had, but cousins and, my sister's friends and my brother's friends. And it's kind of like really that feeling of going home is like that safe place that kind of, it's a stressful world we live in right now, especially going through, in my world, what we're going through right now on the COVID scene. So it's kind of just takes me back to that time in my life where I felt safe, where I feel like that love of Macomb and the community. And it's great to sit there and have old friends come over and we get caught up. And I'm there and then I'm back in the rat race, but it allows me to go back. So yeah, I think Macomb, growing up in that environment is vital. And I don't think I ever lost that. It's still a part of me, and I still go back there, obviously, every chance I get. And when I do, it's a pretty special feeling.